The topic of my proposal revolves around learning, specifically how children are able to learn. My curiosity to research learning comes from personal experiences growing up and the techniques I have come to see being used. Not only this, but it is through my research that I have come to learn that there are actually better ways of learning. I thought learning was simply just learning. Apparently, it's a little more complicated than that, I found out, and actually really important. For example, our book for this class mentions that without learning, we'd be unable to do much, like walk, talk, or even read an introductory psychology textbook chapter about learning. Not only that, but that learning lies at the heart of just about every domain of psychology. This ultimately brings me to the definition of learning, which is the change in an organism's behavior or thought as a result of experience. One of the articles I read was titled Effects of Learning with Gesture on Children's Understanding of a New Language Concept by Elizabeth M. Wakefield. This article focused on how students' ability to gesture while being taught facilitates their learning experience. Basically, what they did is they compared the utility of gesture to a speech alone strategy. The result was that gesture use was predictive of learning for children. Another article I read dealing with learning was an article titled What Can Chinese and German Children Tell Us About Their Learning and Play in Kindergarten by Wu S. This article had two groups, one from Hong Kong and one from Germany. The kids from Hong Kong were instructed with lecture only and very few play. The kids from Germany had more activities that involved play and learning and less lecture. The results turned out that those from Hong Kong only remembered the playing activities, while those from Germany remembered the learning part of the playing activities. These two articles deal with two very different ways in which different style of teaching is beneficial for these students, and is what led me to my research question, which can be more simply put, what is the best method of learning when it comes to children? My hypotheses for my research proposal would be that children who learn through interactions and activities are more likely to retain the information than those who learn through the traditional way, which is of lecture only. On a larger scale, I truly believe that this research can have a significant impact on how we go about teaching children. By finding the best way that children learn, we could potentially solve a multi-billion-dollar health problem that we currently are facing. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention states that chronic disease is the health challenge of the 21st century. To put this into numbers, 75% of healthcare costs are attributable to chronic disease. If that doesn't mean much to you, what if I told you that 7 out of 10 Americans die every year from chronic disease? Now that I have your attention, what if I told you that all of this can be prevented, or at least much of it can be prevented? The answer to this problem lies in this idea called the Life Perspective course, which professes that the most crucial moment in our entire lives are actually the very beginnings of our life. Not only that, but it is our childhood that defines our adulthood. Who would have thought? By finding the best method of learning when it comes to children, I truly, truly believe that we will find the multi-billion-dollar answer. There will be less people who suffer from chronic diseases because they would know better. As for a summary sentence for my research proposal, I would say something along the lines of this experiment addresses the question of which method of learning is best for children by looking at two very different ways to approach teaching. My participants will consist of 32 kids from 5th grade from different elementary schools in the Santa Clara County using random sampling. The students will most likely not have had any classes on psychology, and it will be their first exposure to psychology. As for my procedures, first off, the 32 students will be placed in one of the two groups using random assignment. Random assignment will be determined by a flip of a coin. There will be a total of two groups, so Group 1 and Group 2. Group 1 will be lectured at 11 a.m. on a sunny, warm day, while the other group, Group 2, will be lectured the following day at the same time if the weather is the same. Both groups will receive the same lecture on classical conditioning from Mrs. Margaret in the same room, O'Donnell 105. However, Group 1 will only get a lecture, whereas Group 2 will get that same lecture, but with an activity at the end. At the very end, both groups will receive the same test. As for my measures, my dependent variable is the test scores of the two groups. My independent variable is the activity that Group 2 receives. My control group is Group 1, and my experimental group is Group 2. For my analysis, in order to test this hypothesis, I will gather the means of the two groups, and in the end, if my hypothesis is to be supported, the mean of the two groups must be statistically significantly different from each other. As for some of the strengths of my study design include that I control the extraneous variables very well. Some of my weaknesses could be that my sample is too small and that there could be some potential bias from the teacher. In the end, someone once said, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn." Learning is very interesting and you learn something new every single day. Thank you.